where I split off from a lot of people who have the racial conversation is where do we go from here? So I guess I will ask you this question. Well, so that kid that I saw on that bus, what would you tell him? How, like, in my mind, like you said, I think for the most part, he's probably already lost. But if we were to try to help that kid, what would you tell him? That's what I want to know.
So, in order to answer that question, I'm gonna tell you another story, okay?
Okay.
And then we'll come back to this kid because it's very similar. And I think I told you this story during our Zoom call. I'm gonna bring it up again, and this is in my poem. So, 6 years old, and I had already been told the difference between black and white. You know, I had watched VHS tapes and PBS specials about the civil rights movement, about Dr. King, all this stuff. So I had an understanding a little bit of racial dynamics, but I was always taught it was a thing of the past. I was always taught that all of this was in the past and this was over. And that was the impression that I got. And it was reinforced by every adult I ever encountered up to this moment when I was walking the halls of my elementary school. And this 6-year-old kid, another racialized black kid, comes up to me and just out of nowhere, I still remember his name, Enrico. And Enrico comes up to me and he goes, "Yo, why don't you act black?" And I was like, "What?" I was like, "What do you mean by that?" And he goes, "Well, you get good grades. You don't curse. You're not in a gang." And he just started rattling off all of these things about what it meant to be black to him. And I had this cascade of realizations in that moment, even at 6 years old, as a precocious little 6-year-old kid. And I was having all of these realizations of what it meant that he thought that that's what it meant to be black. I was like sad, first of all, for him, that he thought that he needed to act out these things in order to be black, because it meant that he had internalized all of these negative behaviors as being a part of him. And then I was also realizing that all of the adults had taught me that all of this race stuff was in the past. But I realized for him to ask me that question and for him to tell me these things, that was impossible. That there was no way I was having this conversation and it was reality when if what those adults had been telling me about race was true, that it was a thing of the past. It was very much in the present for this kid, you know? And so I was like, okay. So I'm realizing that there's, you know, all of these adults who believe this, and that's definitely not true. You know, I can't deny what's in front of my face right here. And what I wanted to tell that kid, I was in shock. You know, I was having a transcendental experience at that time. But what I think back and what I would have told him is that, you know, that's not what it means to be black. You know, blackness is something that was put on us. And you may have been noticing that I say racialized black and racialized white, right? Like when I
was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. So the reason I'm saying that is because it's my way of acknowledging that a racial hierarchy was created to create a hierarchy of human beings, of superiority and inferiority. And that is literally the only reason. Blackness was something that was put on us as a mark of inferiority. And that's the only reason it was put on us. There is literally no other reason. And I think a lot of people don't recognize that or don't understand that because we don't really talk about it that way. And it's become like, oh, black culture, right? So like it's kind of been subsumed into something else that I guess people believe that we've somehow taken control of, even though that's not even remotely the case. But like, you know, it's been detached from its actual meaning for a lot of people. And so I say racialized, so I am acknowledging that this hierarchy was put on all of us. None of us had a choice on it. And that's what it means. It does not mean a part of our identity. And in fact, I would say that I don't have a black identity. You know, my identity is not connected to my blackness, but I recognize that I'm black. I recognize that I exist in this world as a black man, that people perceive me as a black person, and that means something to various individuals who are categorized the same way, who are categorized differently, who have various racialized experiences, right? And then for some people, it doesn't mean anything at all, right? And so having that understanding of that's the scenario, that's why I use the word racialized. So I let people know this is this is where I'm at with it. Like, because not everyone's in the same place. For some people, they're still just like that 6-year-old boy I ran into in the hallway. They
Yeah, that's
believe
crazy.
they believe in their own inferiority. They believe that they have to act a certain way to be black. And if you're not acting a certain way, then you're not black. Even if your skin is darker than mine, right?
Yeah.
And there's other people who think like those white liberals thought about you, right? That like, oh, there's no way you can succeed because you're black. You can't accomplish the goals that you set out with because you're black. And there's people who believe that, you're not as black as someone else because I have descendants who are African descendants of slaves and you don't, or something like that. Or you have a white person in your lineage and therefore you're not as black as I am. Like there are people who believe all kinds of different things about race. So I use that word to like open up the conversation. But to go back to your initial question about what I would tell that kid, I actually wouldn't tell that kid anything. What I would do is ask that kid. I would ask that kid what he thinks, because you always got to start. And I'm a teacher, as you know, okay? You always got to start from where people are at, right? If that kid is coming from a place of reverence of white people, I would need that kid to articulate that, put it in words. And then I would ask them why they think that, right? And sometimes all it takes is for people to reflect upon why they've come to a certain conclusion. And when they actually reflect upon that, they realize there's no basis for it. I've had a lot of people experience that through the years, just questioning people about, oh, like this is what you think. Oh, why do you think that? And they've never thought about why they think it. They just have gone with it. And then for the first time, they think about, why do I think that? And that is enough to break the spell, to make them realize, oh, this is ludicrous. That makes no sense. Why would I rever another human being over myself just because they have white, or light colored skin? It makes no sense, And so I would just guide that kid down a path to that kind of realization through questioning. And that's a lot of the work that I do on the show in general and just in my teaching practice when I teach math, when I teach writing, when I teach all these things. It's all the same. So for me, that's what I would do.
Wow, that's a good answer. I think I agree with that. I don't know if I would do the same thing, but I definitely agree with your there is nothing wrong with what you just said about just asking them a question. Why do you think that? Like, yeah.
That's how we learn, right? Like you have to question yourself. You have to learn to interrogate your own beliefs. I've done a lot of that work myself, for myself.
Well, the thing is, I'm talking to you now, and we're having this conversation, and you're using a couple of key words there, and you use a phrase. I'll come back to it, but you say that's what you do for yourself. The problem I found is that the phrase that you use is you got to meet them where they're at. Um, and this is going to sound a little bit callous than what I'm about to say, but it's like a lot of times I'm like, I don't have the time to meet someone where they're at. Like I don't have the time or the energy. I would like to do that. And maybe this is why I'm not a teacher right now. Maybe I should be. I don't know. But maybe this is just maybe that's just a me being jaded about the whole situation, is that the racial people being racialized or having these thoughts about, like that kid that you met, that he was going through all of that. If I was in that scenario, I don't know what I would say to that, because I would just think that this guy is hopeless. Because now keep in mind, I've had a unique childhood. My mom, she sent me to an elementary, a really internationally mixed elementary school in Jackson, Mississippi, like one of the most liberal elementary schools in the conservative South. I had different races in every classroom. I had Mexicans, Jews, girl from Taiwan, Venezuela, Philippines, Ghana, like all of these that was my environment as a child. Then you add on to that, and a lot of people kind of cringe with this, but my mom was also a Jehovah's Witness. And as a Jehovah's Witness, one of their core tenements is that all humans are the same. Your Jehovah Witness, the Jehovah Witnesses are just as big as Catholics as far as their global reach, and it was pretty much the same thing with them as far as having an international community, and that's kind of the environment I was raised in. And outside of that, I would go outside in the streets or go to school, and it was majority black, but it was like we're black, but we're all on this planet. In other words, it's hard to articulate it in a child's mind. My mind was so broad that I understood like, yeah, in Jackson, Mississippi, we're black. But if I go to Taiwan, it's always like it's gonna be like Americans there. I mean, no, like British people there, there's Chinese people there. Like that's the kind of environment I lived in. That was my worldview. So even in school, when I went to middle school, it was 90% black. You had your geeky black kids. You had the black kids that like anime. You had your kids that were like drug dealers. You had all types of black people. So it wasn't like it was hard to say, oh, to be black, you got to be like a gangster or a drug dealer. No, we saw all kind of kids. So that's kind of the environment that I grew up in. And if I encountered someone who thought that, and I was like, well, I mean, I did encounter those kind of kids, and mostly they were just like hood kids who didn't know any better. So I was like, whatever. I mean, that's the way you see the world. I feel sorry for you, but I don't know if that sounds kind of callous, but yeah,
No,
that's
I think it's reasonable, to be honest. That was kind of my reaction too. I didn't know what to say at the time. I was shocked. Like, I
yeah, I
mean,
would be shocked too. Like that. What?
I had no idea how to respond to him. I was literally in shock. I was mouth open, just like listening to this, just like in shock, having all these realizations. So I think it's perfectly reasonable what you're saying. Like, but I think the only difference between our reactions is like you say, oh, that kid's a lost cause. For me, I pretty much the same way that, you think that all people are human beings, like there's a whole wide world out there, open mind and this and that.
Hmm.
I also believe that all humans have the capacity to change their minds, like
Yeah.
I do believe that that is inherent in all of us. And I've seen
Hmm.
it. I've seen people go from one extreme to the other, like, and
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
see it a lot these days due to the extreme nature of propaganda and how it can proliferate
Yes, you're
these
right. You're
days.
right.
So I just think it's all about while you may sell yourself short, in my opinion, and think that
Wait,
you can't,
what do you mean? You
because
talking
you
about me?
said that you don't think you can necessarily have the time or energy to meet people where they're at.
Oh,
I don't believe that. I don't believe
you
that
don't
for a
believe that?
second. I don't believe it for a second. I think that anybody can. It may not be the most natural thing, okay? It may
Mhm.
not be the easiest thing to do in the beginning, but nothing is, okay, if you're not practiced at it. I'm a teacher now. I've been teaching classes. I've been teaching people since 2006 and before that. I mean, when I
Yeah.
was in second grade, my teacher in the all black elementary school I went to, that's still just down the street from where I live, like, she used to bring me up to the front of the class and teach the lesson. I've been teaching since I was very young. So I've been meeting people where they're at for a long time. I was a kid mentor. I was in mentorship programs all throughout. And I used to be a peer mentor, mentoring other kids. I used to be
Yeah.
tutoring
Yeah.
other kids. I've been teaching for so long. And what I've learned, bro, is that anybody can learn. And the number one thing that stops people from learning and changing and growing is their
Mhm.
belief that they can't. So that thing that you said when you're like, I don't think I can, that is the thing that stops you from doing it. It's that belief.
Well, okay. Let me rephrase that. I don't. Man, you're making me sound like I'm really callous here, man. But like, it's like I don't want to waste my time.
No, I mean, I get that. I get that. You may
You know what I'm
think it's,
saying?
but by saying you think it's a waste of time, right? You're
Hmm.
basically creating the end. You are
The
creating
end.
the,
Okay.
you,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
see what I'm saying? Like, if you believed that you could get through to someone, then you wouldn't see it as a waste of time, probably. Or,
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
you, you
You're
know what I
making
mean?
some valid points. The the only thing I would say is that And you're good at math, man. You know the percentages, man. Like, what is the percentage of if you got, I don't know, 10 felons? What is the percentage of the number of felons who are going to just, I don't know, change your life around?
I
Let's
don't know,
be
man.
real.
I mean, I've met a lot of felons in my life who have changed their lives around. So like,
Well,
I don't know. I don't know what the percentages are, but like the point is, right?
uh,
It's not about the stats. For me anyway. I get why
uh,
you're thinking about it because you're thinking about time, right? And like, why would I
yeah.
invest my time if the percentage that I'll make a difference is so low? For me, the answer to that question is because there's a chance. If nobody gives you a chance,
Hmm.
then I don't feel like I can sentence people to not having a chance. I feel like I need to always allow people to have a chance. Now, if I give you that chance and you waste it, that's what you did. Like once you've
Yeah.
taken an action, or once you've shown that you're not willing, then I think it's totally reasonable to be like, okay, this is not worth my time investment. Okay. Now, for me, I've gone beyond that quite a large number of times throughout my life. So I see that eventually people will take you up on that chance if you show that you're true, I guess you could say, in offering
Hmm.
it. But a lot
Yeah.
of these people you have to understand, people who are felons, people who do bad, people who think bad about themselves, you know, a lot of times these people have been through all kinds of traumas that have kind of taught them that nobody will give them a chance. So they're actually, ironically, they have the same mindset that you're kind of having about this scenario, because they think that, oh, there's no point for me to try to do better because no matter what I do, everyone's going to look at me as a felon. There's no point in me to try to do better because everyone's always just going to think I'm a stupid N-word. Like these are the
Hmm.
thoughts that permeate these people's minds and lead to them to do these stupid things that they do. And so if you show them that, no, 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 I'm not going to think that about you. I'm going to think about you as you are. And I want to know who you are. And I want to find out who you are, what you think. And I may not agree with you, but I'm going to listen to you. And I'm going to perceive you the way you actually are. Some people never get that.
Hmm.
Like that kid I ran into in the hallway, he was taught that this is who you are. That means that nobody tried to find out who he is. People were
Yeah.
telling him who he is. And that is what he learned. I ran into him 30 years later, almost to the day. Yeah, because I moved back to my hometown
Yeah.
and I ran into him at a bar. The same
Does
kid.
he still know that you talk about him on on live
I
streams?
mean, yeah, I told him. I told him, I was like, I don't know if you remember this, but this is what you said to me. And he
Uh-huh.
was so embarrassed, full of shame about it, and didn't want to talk to me about it. He was just like, I'm sorry. I didn't know anything back then. He's like, I'm just sorry. And he was trying to get away from me as fast as possible, to be honest, because he just like was so embarrassed about that story.
Yeah.
But I mean, he didn't know what he didn't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So and there's a lot of people like that who don't know what they don't know. And so I just know that I used to be that way. Like we're all that way in some way, shape, or form. In some context, we don't know what we don't know, and that's part of what makes us human. So
Yeah.
I can't deny people's humanity. I think that it's so important not to do that, not just for other people, but for yourself, because that's what it means to, I don't know, live in reality the way it actually is. In reality, a lot of us, we're all ignorant, of something. That's
Yeah.
like how our realities are. And I know that we got social media, we've got, all these people making videos and content and stuff that they try to act like they know everything and that they're the kings and masters of their domain. But that is not reality. That is not how we actually exist. That's not how things actually are. And I like to live my life the way things actually are. And people appreciate that when you are, being humble, when you're showing, I don't know everything. Even though I'm a master math teacher, I don't know everything about math. So when I tell my students, you know what, I don't know, that like shocks them sometimes. They're like, oh, you acted like you knew everything. I'm like, did I? Because I'm telling you right now, I don't know something. I was like, let's even try to figure it out together. I'll show them the process that I go through, to try to figure things out. Let's do it together. Thanks for watching. For access to the full-length conversation and all of the 2-hour-long unedited conversations that I've had on race, click the support link in the description below. Thanks for your support and see you next time.